Today, I want to talk about a build and a setup here for both PvE and PvP.
Five minutes left. Keep it up. Double down. Don't see capture. You have advantage.
It's incredible, and you're inevitable. The snap, the Thanos build. The Solar Lock is pretty powerful when you set it up right. There's a lot of stacking, you also get some help from the artifact, and it just allows you to delete enemies. I want to show you how I've been running this and why I'm running it this way. What's nice is that there's also some other things that you can do to change things around a little bit. It starts with Winter's Guile, the Warlord's Sigil. Eliminating enemies with melee attacks increases your melee damage. Get a melee times 1, 130%, times 2, 260, times 3, 390, times 4, 520, times 5, 650% more melee damage. Big damage numbers. When you start adding in the aspect, the fragments, the mods, you have a very powerful setup. And again, there's a couple ways to go. So for the melee, obviously the Incinerator Snap. A fan of burning sparks that explode and scorch targets. Class ability, use any, I've been using Phoenix Dive. Grenade, depends on how you want the build to go. Healing is a part of it, otherwise, a fast grenade. Or you can do solar. I'll talk about that as I go. For the aspects, touch of flame. Various enhancements. The healing is improved. For restoration and cure, the solar has lava. Fusions explode twice. Then we have heat rises. Big part, you consume your grenade to get that heat rises buff, but you're mostly doing it for the final blows from the air. You get more melee energy when you get those final blows. That's important. For the fragments, there's a way for survivability, and there's also a way just to go full all in, hammer down on the snap. So that's what I want to start with, all in. Even without consuming the grenade, being in the air, grabbing final blows from there massively helps the melee energy, and that's something to build on. So going all in for the fragments, we have Ember of Searing. Defeating scorched targets grants a melee energy. This will stack with heat rises. If you're in the air and that final blow happens while the enemy is scorched, both of them give melee energy. It's a win-win, you get it back, especially when you combine it with some other mods down the line. We have Ember of Torches. Powered melee attacks against combatants make you and nearby allies radiant. You're going to be throwing a ton of powered melees. Being radiant in PvE gives 25% increased damage. It's less in PvP, but we can also build on this fragment as well later on. Ember of Eruption. Your solar ignitions have an increased area of effect. I'm going to come right back to this in a second. Ember of Ashes. You apply more scorch stacks to targets. The more scorch that's applied, the faster an ignition will ignite. So this works really well when enemies are close together and that scorch spreads. To keep adding scorch for ignitions. So for the mods, you have a lot of freedom. This is one way I've been really liking. And we're going to go through a couple of other variations. Melee Wellmaker. Powered melee attacks grant solar wells. Elemental Charge. Picking up a solar well gives 2 stacks of charge with light. Bountiful wells. For each elemental well that is made, it makes another. So with a melee final blow, instead of 1, it's going to spawn 2 wells. Heavy-handed. While charged with light, you regain half of your melee energy when you use a charged melee, consuming a stack of charge with light. Secondary, so think Might of Mini, Drang, and more. While surrounded by multiple combatants, defeating an enemy with an SMG, sidearm, fusion, or shotgun is going to add ammo for that weapon to your reserves. Solar weapons work well because you're going to be radiant. Then to top it all off, from the aspect, Solar Fulmination. Your ignitions do increased damage in an increased radius. I then use Supercharged. You can have 2 additional stacks of charge of light with a max of 5, so this is to ensure that I always get half of my melee back no matter what with heavy-handed. So the big part of all of this, that max stack of 650% Warlord Sigil times 5, or any Winter's Guile stack, not only does it apply to the melee, but that damage buff is also applied to the ignition explosions because it comes from a melee. So you're getting big damage from Winter's Guile. You add in the fragment Ember of Eruption, your solar ignitions have an increased area of effect. That's pairing and stacking with Solar Fulmination. The ignitions do increased damage and have an increased radius. It's a nuke. So you saw in the opening clip, then you add in something like Tractor Cannon. The explosion, the ignition itself did 454,000. So with this build, the main takeaway, you can consume the grenade or not, but you do want to be in the air. Maybe even a little short hop. Being in the air is the best way because that melee, when you throw it, half of it comes back because of heavy-handed. As you get kills with it, A, the heat rises aspect gives melee energy. B, defeating the targets you scorch grants melee energy. And C, you're also going to be radiant. It's a very strong way to play. There are stretches where you just snap everything in your path, one-shotting everything. It's awesome. And before I get into some other ways to change around some of the fragments and mods, let's talk about PvP real quick. Winter's Guile has actually always been able to one-shot on the second melee. And what's really nice about the snap is that compared to Celestial Fire, the other charged melee is the one that we've had, the Incinerator Snap detects the distance. So if it's an actual melee range, it will throw a melee. If they're outside, you throw the snap. But with Celestial Fire, in the past, you needed the bindings to have a charged melee throw and a regular melee. Because if you have your charged melee up and you try to melee them in very close quarters, it'll send Celestial Fire from a meter away. So that's what's really nice about the snap. But if you do get a melee final blow and only have one stack on, you can Incinerator Snap the next enemy. And once you do that, you're at ×2. Then you can start meleeing. It is very, very fun. It's no joke. There's a lot of clips that you've been seeing, but I was playing Rift, I got a melee final blow, the Spark Runner went right by me, so I turned real quick, threw the snap out, one-shot him, and since I had my Warlord stacks of Winter's Guile up, there's an enemy right in front of me, got him down, then I saw one trying to revive, I one-shot meleeed him, and then I one-shot meleeed the revive, and then around the corner comes another enemy, and I just punched him for 750 damage. And just like in PvE, anything that you do with this melee is a lot better from the air because you get that melee energy back. We're not really messing with Charge with Light anymore, but the heat rises, melee energy from top really does help. You can take off Touch of Flame, add on Icarus Dash. That way you get your movement back, and then go from there. But Winter's Guile has always been able to melee and then one-shot melee after that within the time frame. Again, my favorite thing is that the Incinerator Snap does have that built-in distance to where it won't throw the melee if they're actually in melee range, and I really like that. It allows you to play aggressive, and with a lot of range coming in for a lot of weapons like shotguns, I've been using a slug. I always use slug shotguns for any melee build. We can go back to Deadly Reach, we can go to Synthesebs, we can go to anything. Anything that I've talked about on this channel, it's best used with a slug because it will not one-shot to the body. You don't have to mess with anything. It's the furthest one-shot to the body with a melee final blow, then you can go hunting. It's great. The PvP Thanos works, and I find myself throughout the day before I play wanting to go do this. It's so fun to do. But let's come back to some of the fragments and aspects. There isn't just one way to do it, and actually, changing things around makes the build do completely different things. And with those things, let's remember, it's about to get a little bit better. At the making of this video, these changes go live tomorrow. For Heat Rises, they added the behavior. Consuming your grenade now releases a burst of cure ×2 around you, healing you and nearby allies, and consuming a healing grenade increases the strength of the cure to ×3, and consuming a Touch of Flame healing grenade provides restoration as an additional benefit. So those are the two aspects that we're using currently, Heat Rises, Touch of Flame. And for Icarus Dash, they added in while airborne, rapidly defeating targets with your super or any weapon cures you. And Celestial Fire, each Celestial Fire projectile now applies 10 Scorch stacks, increase to 15 with Ember of Ashes. So Celestial Fire will become a player, but due to the bindings, I think that the snap is still going to be better. We're going to wait and see. And it overall just spreads wider horizontally. So the second way, you would take off Eruption and add Empyrean. Solar Weapon or Ability Final Blows extend the duration of restoration and radiant effects. And then you would take off Ember of Searing and add in Ember of Solace. Now, Searing, even though really good, super good for what we're doing, defeating scorched targets grants melee energy. Even though you lose that, we still have a path with heavy-handed Charge with Light, and then Heat Rises being in the air granting melee energy, so it's going to be okay. So Ember of Solace, Radiant, and Restoration effects applied to you have increased duration. Empyrean, Solar, or Ability Final Blows extend the duration of Restoration and Radiant. So the four now are going to be Solace, Torches, Empyrean, and Ashes. And now you're getting a little crazy with it because you still have tons of melee damage with Winter's Guile. You have a ton of ways to get it back still. Now you're adding in healing. And you can do this with the other build as well. One thing to add, take off Supercharged, add in Classy Restoration. Activating your class ability grants you Restoration. Between the Rifts, Phoenix Dive, the Healing Grenade, the new updates coming, this is fire. Because you defeat enemies with the Snap Melee. You become Radiant. At some point, you can either Phoenix Dive, use that class ability, you can throw a healing grenade down, then you have Restoration. From then on, all those snap melees, which you can get back really quickly, and then Solar Weapon Final Blows extend that duration. A melee tank. You can also add in other things. There's a lot of things that work, you just gotta make it to you. You can take off some mods, add some other ones. Add in like Explosive Wellmaker. It's gonna be amazing. A lot of mods will be. And there's a ton of artifact mods for the class item. You're gonna have to make decisions there. There's things like Flame Harvesting. Solar Exotic Final Blows create Solar Elemental Wells. Polaris Lance, Terraboss, Sunshot. Just those final blows create the wells. You have your elemental charge, you have your heavy-handed, you go from there. Then you can add in 1-2 punch, add in tractor cannon. There's no right or wrong way. But for me, the two main routes to go, the health way with restoration, Empyrean, Solus, so you can extend those two things, or you can just go all in with Scorch, Ignition, and melee energy. Very fun way to play, very powerful way to play. Restoration also works in the Crucible, so it's up to you on how far you want to build into it. But this is so fun. It's so strong. And it's also kind of funny with the snap of the finger. Go try it out. If you're new here, remember to hit the subscribe button. And if you are subscribed, thank you so much for your support. I love what I do, and I'm able to do it because of you. So I really appreciate you guys. There's still a lot of builds and reviews to come. Let's talk about this one and the Solar Lock down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. And until the next one, I am CoolGuy.